Welcome to the second of the double header Legacy Warriors podcast that I got for you guys this weekend. The first, obviously, I did yesterday for LFA 217, which goes down Friday today. And now the one that I'm going to be dropping for you guys here for Cage Warriors 193, which goes down Saturday morning. Now, obviously, being in the same getup as both the podcasts, I've been recording these podcasts back to back, but I'll hold off on the Cage Warriors breakdown until Friday to drop for you guys, just to give the LFA one some time to breathe and get some views. So with that said, there might be some matchups that end up getting canceled due to the weigh-ins, and some of these odds may be off from when this actually ends up dropping compared to when I am recording it now. So just keep that in mind as I break these fights down for you guys. Just a reminder, I will have track plays for all these cards, including OKTAGON 70 something. I don't even remember which number, 75, I think, on the MMA, LOT, and Patreon page, track plays for all those things. And I'll only have written breakdowns for OKTAGON, as I won't be doing a video breakdown for that. So you can check the link in the description below for all that good stuff. Also, I'll be doing somewhat of a quick picks version of this breakdown for you guys. I'm flying out in a few hours here, so I want to be concise and brief with my time here, so that I can get out everything that I need to get out before I have to hop on a plane. So let's get right into this bad boy. So it's Cage Warriors 193. It's headlined by George Hardwick. Non-title fight. Obviously, he lost his title to Samuel Sanchez earlier this year. He's taken on short notice replacement Nonato Jr. And then a couple other interesting fights sprinkled out on this 15-fight card. So let's get right into it. First matchup up, Matthew Elliott, minus 900, going up against Alexis Tsarmantidis, who comes in at plus 500. Elliott, very strong physical grappler, and I expect him to get the positions he needs to either find that finish against Tsarmantidis or grind this fight out, but minus 900 is a little bit too wide. Tsarmantidis has some decent power in his shots. He has some decent grappling as well, and Elliott is more of a, brute grappler than an actual submission specialist. He has submissions on his record, but I'd be surprised if he can, replicate what Max Lally did to Tsarmantidis last time around. So I'm going to pass on this at minus 900, but I think Elliott wins, and it, should start to look easier for him as this gets into deeper water. Next up, Rook coming in at minus 105, going up against Ghizzo, who comes in at minus 135. I probably butchered her name, but it is what it is. But Ghizzo looks a little bit robotic and kind of stiff on the feet, but she's strong. She trains with a good group of fighters, mainly from KSW. One of her bigger training partners, or main training partners, is Victoria Suzuka, who's actually one of the toughest women on the KSW roster. Very high level prospect, and Ghizzo, kind of implements a similar style with her aggressive grappling approach. Even her strikes, they land kind of thudding, even though they don't look the greatest, but she's very strong. She's very physical, and I think she'll have good success here in terms of taking Rook to the ground and really just causing her trouble from that top position. Rook doesn't provide too much danger in the striking realm to take advantage of some of the robotic strikes that Ghizzo normally throws, but once this fight hits the ground, I think Ghizzo's physicality and strength will be a big difference maker, and that will lead to her eventually getting a submission here. So I like Ghizzo, and I think she gets the finish, and I think she makes it look dominant. I could be off here, but from what I've seen, she is very strong and very difficult to deal with, and Rook is nothing special either. Next up, Jeff Pavey coming in at plus 350, going up against Fraser Patterson, who comes in at minus 600. Pavey, 6'5" frame, very big dude. His nickname is Jiu-Jitsu, but he mainly goes out there and strikes with his opponents and tries to break them there. And then on Patterson's side, he has a Muay Thai tattoo on his back, but he normally looks to grapple his opponents and try to stifle them there. I think Patterson could struggle a bit here in terms of holding Pavey down. And then on the feet, maybe Pavey's strength, size, and just forward movement causes Patterson some issues here. I think Patterson is the more promising prospect. Obviously, he's 20 years old, 10-1-1 as an amateur. This is his pro debut. I think he'll get enough of those takedowns and enough control to grind this one out, but no way should he be minus 600. I could be off, but again, I think Pavey has a good shot to potentially pull off an upset here as well. So if anybody's looking to take an underdog shot on him, I'm sure he'll close closer to plus 400, plus 500 maybe. I think it's justified. but there's a lot still to be revealed about Patterson, especially dealing with somebody much bigger than him here in Pavey. All right. Next up, Harvie coming in at minus 155, going up against Mackenzie, who comes in at plus 115. Now, I'm a big Mackenzie fan, but I'm starting to see that his wrestling is really not working out against legitimate competition. Like, he's getting these takedowns, but he's unable to, get to his submissions, or he's unable to really land meaningful damage, which is why fighters with better striking can land more damage on the feet. And even if they end up getting controlled for a decent amount of time, Mackenzie's not able to muster up enough damage to earn the decision from the judges. So he's really intent on trying to get finishes with submissions more often than not if he hopes to end up getting his wins. I don't think too highly of Harvie. He's a better striker than Mackenzie. Good enough grappling that he may make it difficult for Mackenzie to establish dominant control or get off on submissions or any type of finishes of his own. So I'm going to lean Harvie ever so slightly. I'm a fan of Mackenzie, and I'm hoping he proves me wrong here, but I think Harvie will do enough damage in the striking realm, provide enough resistance in the grappling, and then that should allow him to go on to win this fight by decision. All right. Next up, we got Jake McHugh going up against Connor Patterson. Fun fight here between two heavy grapplers and two big gyms coming out of England. You got McHugh representing Next Gen, which is Paddy Pimblett's gym, and Connor Patterson representing GBTT, which is coached by Brad Pickett. I think McHugh is the more dangerous submission specialist here, and I think even though Patterson might have a bit of a wrestling advantage, I think once this fight hits the mat, we'll see the difference in terms of the grappling, or at least the jiu-jitsu, and I think we'll see McHugh either throw up submissions and be successful with it, find reversals and get those dominant positions to control Patterson and eventually work for a submission. But I really like McHugh in this spot, and I think we'll see him have fun on the mat and eventually find that submission over Patterson here. So to get him, I'm assuming he'll probably close as a plus 110, plus 100 underdog once the VIG gets evaporated here. But I do like him to win this matchup. So give me McHugh and McHugh by submission. All right, next up, we got Sam Kelly coming in at minus 230, going up against Giovanni Fernandez, who comes in at plus 160. Now, Kelly has let me down more often than not. This guy just, he looked good earlier on in his career. Slick grappler, slick submissions, some decent striking as well. But he's lost to guys that he shouldn't be losing to. Pretty much throwing himself into a guillotine against Richard Kalos. That was a bad move from his part. Getting outworked and bloodied up by Alessandro Giordano. Not a good look. And he's going up against a very game opponent here in Giovanni Fernandez, who pulled off a solid win, I believe, over Jimmy Quinn, was the guy that he was able to upset. But even in fights he ends up losing, he's very game, very difficult, puts up a lot of resistance, and often moves forward and really pushes a pace. I don't mind Fernandez here as a plus 160 dog, especially with Kelly fumbling the bag left, right, and center until he shows that he is really starting to dial things in. It's hard to trust him at this chalky line. But again, the stylistic clash here with Fernandez, I could definitely see Fernandez making this a very difficult fight for Kelly. So give me Fernandez. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up finding a submission either. All right, next up, we got Michael Blair coming in at minus 300, going up against Grant Ogborne, who comes in at plus 200. Now, Blair, I think he's being set up in a bounce back spot here. He's shown all sides of his game, but it shows when there are guys that are just slightly better than him in some of these spots. I think Blair is the better striker here without a doubt, and I think he has a good enough grappling game to shut that down from Ogborne's side. Ogborne is a guy that either goes out there and folds guys that just don't deserve to be fighting at a professional MMA level, or he ends up falling short against any guys that provide legitimate resistance to him. That's exactly where I think he's facing here against Blair. So I don't mind parlaying Blair at that minus 300 line. I think he goes out there and he probably even finds a finish later on in this matchup. All right. Next up, we got Reese McEwan coming in at minus 160, going up against Elton Armindo, who comes in at plus 120. Now, both these guys often look to go out there and grapple their opponents, but the difference between them is McEwan has a tougher strength of schedule than what Armindo is going up against, and I think that will allow McEwan, especially with the strength advantage, to really dictate the pace of where this fight ends up taking place. I think we'll see McEwan land his big strikes. I think we'll see him mixing the takedowns well. I think he'll keep Armindo away from his grappling. Even if Armindo is able to land some takedowns, I don't think he'll be able to get all that amount of control against McEwan. And I think it's just a matter of time before McEwan really starts to take over this matchup. And I think he ends up grinding it out and winning it on the scorecards. Minus 160 is not a bad line either. All right. Next up, we got Mateusz Figlak coming in at minus 600, going up against Tom Crosby, who comes in at plus 350. Now, Figlak is coming back from a knee injury that he suffered, and that's why he's been out of the cage for as long as he had. Crosby, more so looking like he's been focused on coaching as of late, which is why he hasn't been training all that much. But again, similar to McEwan and even... who's the other guy? Blair's fights. This seems to be kind of a setup spot for Figlak to come back to a win. Better striker, better grappler. Durability, obviously, a little bit of a concern at times, but for the most part, I think he is just far closer to his prime, perfectly set up for this matchup. And I think that we'll see Figlak outwork Crosby, maybe find a submission or maybe get a decision, but I think Figlak wins pretty easily here. All right, next up. We got Andrew Fisher coming in at plus 100, going up against Orlando Wilson Prins, who comes in at minus 140. Now, Fisher, 40 years old, coming off of a 2-year layoff. If this was the guy that fought Attila Korkmaz back in 2022, I would consider him as an underdog here. Obviously, he has triple the amount of experience as Prince. He has a decent grappling game, but his lack of durability, lack of speed, and probably his inability to establish a good enough grinding game here will keep him from victory. I think Prince, although very mediocre himself, is closer to his prime, faster, can nullify the grappling of Fisher pretty easy. Again, Fisher just too old at this time, and I think that'll eventually lead to Prince finding that finish, but I'm not betting Prince at minus 140. I don't think he's all that great of a fighter, but he's just lucky that he's fighting Fisher at this stage in Fisher's career, especially after a 2-year-long layoff as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if Fisher pulls off the upset, but all the signs are kind of pointing towards Prince hurting Fisher and eventually putting him away. All right. Next up, we got the Cage Warriors debut of George Staines, who comes in at minus 600, going up against William Batista, who comes in at plus 350. Staines was one of Octagon's biggest prospects, but he ended up signing with Cage Warriors because he knew it was a better path to the UFC. This guy's a very good grappler with a smothering style from that top position and has a great cardio game as well. Even though Nofuko was able to get some good control time against him last time, Staines made him work for every single position while out-damaging him the entire time, even before the fight ended up hitting the floor. Look for Staines to really put it on Batista here, who at 26 years old has 18 fights of experience, but it's obvious that he really struggles against guys that have a good enough advantage over him. And even though Batista has a BJJ black belt, I'd be surprised if he has any success against Staines here, who should be able to smother him, break him from that top position, and maybe find a finish in that second or third round. All right. That brings us to our chalky main event as former champion George Hardwick comes in at minus 1,500. I was very excited for him to take on his original opponent, Jan Quay-Hagans, who I've been very high on. Unfortunately, an injury to Quay-Hagans has pulled him out of the matchup. And in steps Nonato Jr., who has been very, very busy in 2025. He's a BJJ black belt who's gone out there and just padded his record against very tomato can level opposition on the Brazilian regional scene. And I think we'll see, when he faces legitimate competition, how he folds under that type of pressure. And Hardwick is the perfect guy to showcase that. Junior might have some success with the takedown or two, but I think Hardwick will quickly work back to his feet and then get to that classic Hardwick style of just wearing Nonato down. And I think it's just a matter of time before Hardwick eventually gets him out of there, especially as Junior starts whiffing on these takedown attempts, starts slowing down and leaving himself ripe for the picking for Hardwick to turn up the volume and really make a statement in terms of his comeback fight here, especially after losing his belt pretty dominantly back earlier this year. So look for a dominant win for Hardwick. I think he finishes Nonato probably in the second or third round. There you guys go. Cage Warriors, again, I'm recording this on Thursday, but I'll drop it Friday, so odds may have shifted. So just take what I say into consideration if you're looking to play some of these spots, or check out the MMA Elliott and Patreon page, as I have all my track plays there. So you can pretty much cheat on the test by just looking at the answers right away. All right. Good luck on all your action. I'll be back later today for the UFC or Noche UFC prop drop. And then, yeah, good luck. See you guys then. Peace.